Thank you very much for having us. My first question will be on Turkey-EU relations in general. At a time when Turkey is becoming increasingly authoritarian, is violating human rights and freedom of expression, the EU is moving closer and establishing closer ties with Turkey. So do you think this is a dilemma, or is this not a dilemma?
Well, there is a dilemma, I think, for EU leaders coming together with the Turkish government, talking only one-dimensionally about migration. And because we put ourselves in this situation, you know, there's a lot of silence about the internal developments in Turkey. So, yes, I'm in favor of more intensive dialogue. I think the Parliament in general has been promoting this for the last 10 years. But the dialogue has to be on many subjects. We cannot just talk about how many people are arriving on the Greek islands. That's too one-dimensional. We must have a broad dialogue with Turkey.
Okay, while EU-Turkey action plan you had in November 2015 has not fully been implemented yet, additional Turkish demands are coming and the EU is going to accept them. What do you think is the message that EU is sending to Turkey and to the other members? And do you think that EP will follow, the Parliament will follow EU decision on this? Do you trust Turkey on this issue?
Well, to be honest, in foreign affairs, it's not a question about trust. It's a question about making agreements and making sure two sides stick to that agreement. Now, let me say, when it comes to the EU-Turkey joint action plan, I have to say, as you saw, it took 4 months for the European Union to agree how this 3 billion will be dispersed. Only this week we started giving the first projects, not to the Turkish government, but to projects dealing with improving the lives of refugees. The other issue is we are only discussing about closing borders. We see the pressure being put by member states on a country like Greece, and we are not really at this moment also being a reliable partner for Turkey. I especially don't like the language used on both sides. I don't like these threats to one another. This is not, you know, an environment that creates some type of trust, some type of confidence. So there's still a long way to go before we can have a type of equal partnership. And first, trust needs to be built between these parties, because it's clear the Turks don't trust the EU to deliver, the EU doesn't trust the Turkish government to deliver, and at the end of the day, we both need each other, so we need to find agreements here.
Okay, there is another issue. EP President Schulz and you on your report have mentioned the importance that freedom of press has for the European values and the European identity, but lately we saw again another opposition newspaper closing down in Turkey, and President Erdogan said that he will not implement, or he will not obey, or he will not respect the Supreme Court decision for the 2 journalists from Cumhuriyet newspaper. What do you think is the next step? What more can you do about it?
Well, I'm very happy that the President of this Parliament has made these clear statements today, because this is what I expect from European leaders, to have a direct dialogue with Turkey, also when things are not going well, to make sure that this message is passed through. So I'm happy with the President having done that. Look, it almost looks like a coincidence that the last time when Can Dündar and Erdem Gül were arrested was just 2 days before the EU-Turkey summit. Now, again, just before the summit, we see a major crackdown on the biggest newspaper in Turkey, on Zaman. Of course, this is also related to the struggle between the AK Party and Gülen, but we see in general that this fits into a pattern of more and more restrictions on the freedom of press, and we have to speak out on this issue. That's what I expect, not just from the President Schulz, but also from the European leaders, whenever they have their talks with Turkey, to make also clear statements there.
Do you think European Union has a responsibility in Turkey alienating itself from the West and from European values, because they kept the accession process an open-ended process? They didn't establish strong dialogue with Turkey. So Turkey maybe went its own way, we can say. Do you think EU has a responsibility and lessons to learn from that?
I think there is a responsibility when it comes to the people, the Turkish people. I think whenever I am in Turkey and speak to people there, many people are disappointed by the way these negotiations went on, because let's be honest, the reason why the accession process for the last 10 years was not going rapidly had nothing to do with internal developments in Turkey, had everything to do with political internal developments in individual member states. Mainly we remember with President Sarkozy in France, that was the moment when certain chapters were blocked, and of course also with Mrs. Merkel, Chancellor Merkel from Germany. So I understand the feeling that people say it's not a merit-based process, it's a political process. And that's why I regret that last year, I'm really happy that there is a more intensive dialogue with Turkey, but that should be completely unrelated to the migration question. The accession process and migration are separate issues. And by us now linking it together, we again say, you see, it's not about you meeting standards. It's actually only if you cooperate and help us on migration,
because
you can move step forwards. This is not the signal I want to send, nor to the European citizens, nor to the Turkish citizens, because this is not giving trust into the accession process.
Okay. In your report, you call for the opening of 2 chapters, chapter 23 and 24, but we know that the Republic of Cyprus has a veto on those chapters. So how do you plan to overcome that veto?
Well, the Parliament, first of all, my report at this stage, it's only my opinion. So let it be clear, this is not yet the opinion of the whole European Parliament. This is always one of the issues where we know the political groups also disagree. What we all agree upon is that Turkey should be given the opening benchmarks, which are to be met before any chapter can be opened. This is actually now also what the letter which was sent by President Juncker of the European Commission also, of course, refers to this, irrespective of the position of member states. Look, the European Parliament, we can only speak for ourselves. And the last 10 years, we said, no matter whether we are happy or unhappy, like we are now with certain reforms in Turkey, I think the most crucial one is these 2 chapters to have an intensive dialogue on fundamental rights. For instance, we are now debating, is Turkey a safe country for refugees? You know, this is now the political debate going on in many member states, also in the European Parliament. For me, how could we say that if we are not even discussing fundamental rights in the accession process with Turkey? You know, so this can be a way to intensify our dialogue where we know we have concerns about negative developments in the country. It doesn't mean Turkey is being awarded. It doesn't mean Turkey is coming closer to membership when we open these chapters. The only thing this would mean is that we want a more intensive dialogue, not just on migration, but especially on human rights.
Okay. In your reports every year you are mentioning about Cyprus problem, and this year you are optimistic about the ongoing negotiations. Are you going to visit Cyprus, or you will have your own observation on the ground on how things are?
I'll be happy to visit Cyprus. I've only been there twice before on holidays, so not in my professional capacity yet. As soon as I get an invitation, and also your ambassador knows this, to Brussels, I'll be happy to travel there. And the reason why I paid so much attention in this year's report, we see a grim picture in the whole neighborhood. Actually, the whole Middle East and Europe are so unstable. Some parts are even thinking they're falling apart. And then we see this hopeful process on Cyprus. So in terms of foreign affairs, not just in terms for your island, but I think for Europe, it would be so important to see that the 2 leaders, the population, can support this process, because it can have a positive effect on the whole region.
And what do you think about the Turkish language? Can it be an official one, an official language of EU, as the President Anastasiadis has requested?
I also, in my report, praised this gesture by President Anastasiadis, because I think it really shows that he's willing to show this leadership, to really show that he's willing to do this process up until the end. I'm sure it was not an easy decision. I'm sure some oppositional groups didn't even like it, but I'm also sure that on the on the Greek-Turkish side, it really meant that they can see that the counterpart is doing efforts in order to really genuinely move this process forward. And I very much hope that when there is, of course, a final solution for the Cyprus question, that we will have then, as Turkey will be then one of the official languages, of course, on Cyprus, that of course we will accept it also as an official language of the EU.
What do you think the European Parliament and EU institutions in general do to help facilitate a solution in Cyprus in terms of technical help or financial help? Yeah. What do you think the European Parliament can do?
I think the European Parliament, just as the Commission or the whole international community, must make sure when there is an agreement that we do everything we can in order to support this reunification. That is, I think, the key message. You know, I don't want the European Parliament to become the place where we are doing the negotiations, which should be happening between the two leaders on Cyprus. Right. So that is some position which I really don't want the Parliament to be taking. That's up to the people living on Cyprus, that's up to the two leaders. Whatever comes out of it, a positive solution, we will do our utmost to support it, and I'm sure the Parliament will also request the Commission to make the adequate funding available for that.
Okay, thank you very much for having us both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.